You're listening to The Broken Truth, where official reports meet hidden files and history is tested against conspiracy.
Nothing stays buried forever.
Dallas, November 22nd, 1963. The air is crisp, the skies are blue. Crowds gather to see a young president who represents hope, renewal, and a break from the old guard. A man named Abraham Zapruder lifts his camera, just as a tourist with a front row view. 18 frames per second. That's the speed at which the most famous home movie in history captured the moment when the United States lost its innocence. 3 shots, 6 seconds. A president's life ended, and 60 years of doubt began. I'm your host, Garrett, and tonight on The Broken Truth, we're diving into the assassination of John F. Kennedy, an event that wasn't just a murder, but a rupture in history. We'll explore the official version, Oswald as the lone gunman, the alternative theories from a second shooter to Mafia revenge, CIA involvement, Cuban plots, and shadow networks. The historical backdrop, the Cold War, civil rights struggles, and the enemies JFK made in these highest circles. And finally, the latest files released in 2025, which continue to feed the fire. And yes, we'll also look at the claim that Kennedy himself exposed a culture of secrecy and a plan some call the deep state. To understand why Kennedy's death hit so hard, you need the context. The 1960s were a pressure cooker. The Cold War with the Soviets had America living under the constant threat of nuclear war. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 had nearly brought the world to annihilation. Civil rights protests filled the street, with segregation still entrenched in the South. And in Washington, Kennedy had enemies. Military leaders frustrated with his refusal to invade Cuba, intelligence officers angry at the Bay of Pigs fiasco, and organized crime bosses under the siege by Attorney General Robert Kennedy. Kennedy, young and charismatic, represented change. But in a world of entrenched power, change can be dangerous. On November 22nd, 1963, Kennedy and Jackie landed in Dallas to kick off a re-election tour. At 12:30 p.m., as the motorcade turned onto Elm Street, shots rang out. Governor Connolly cried out. Kennedy slumped. Jackie climbed onto the trunk, and Agent Clint Hill rushed forward. By 1 p.m., Kennedy was dead. Police quickly converged on the Texas School Book Depository, where shell casings were found on the 6th floor. A rifle, a cheap Italian Carcano, was discovered with Oswald's fingerprints. Within hours, Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested, first for killing Officer J.D. Tippit, and soon after for the assassination of the president. The evidence trail was clear. The rifle was ordered by Oswald under the alias A. Hidell. Backyard photos show him holding the weapon. Witnesses saw a man in the 6th floor windows moments before the shots. The Warren Commission confirmed Oswald as the shooter. He fired 3 shots. 2 struck Kennedy, 1 fatal. But then, 2 days later, Jackie Ruby stepped out of a crowd in the Dallas jail basement and shot Oswald point blank, live on television. And the questions multiplied. Some believe Kennedy wasn't just killed because of where he was that day. They argue he was silenced because of what he said. In April 1961, JFK addressed the American Newspaper Publishers Association. He warned, "The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings." Many historians interpret this as a Cold War call for press vigilance against the Soviet-style secrecy. But conspiracy theorists hear something more. A president openly defying hidden networks of power. Fast forward to Dallas. Kennedy's prepared remarks for the Dallas Trade Mart luncheon, never delivered, were preserved. In them, he wrote about national strength, peace, and resisting extremism. To some, these words read like another warning aimed at forces beyond public control. The theory goes like this. JFK wanted to reduce covert operations after the Bay of Pigs, seek détente with the Soviets, scale back Vietnam, and even rethink monetary policy with Executive Order 1110. These moves threatened what many now call the deep state, an entrenched culture of secrecy within the government and beyond. Files released in recent years show the CIA concealed surveillance on Oswald and maintained murky ties with organized crime and anti-Castro operations. While not proof of an assassination plot, they feed the idea that Kennedy's enemies weren't just abroad. They were inside the very institutions meant to protect him. Mainstream scholars caution JFK's 1961 speech was primarily about Cold War transparency, not domestic conspiracies, and his undelivered Dallas speech was standard campaign fare. But in the conspiracy imagination, these words became his death warrant. Lee Harvey Oswald was a puzzle, a Marine who defected to the Soviet Union, then returned with a Russian wife. A man handing out pro-Castro leaflets, while also contacting anti-Castro groups. And, just weeks before the assassination, traveling to Mexico City to visit both Soviet and Cuban embassies. The evidence tied him tightly to the crime. The rifle traced to his alias, photographs of him holding the weapon, and eyewitnesses placing him in the depository window. But then came the twist. 2 days after Kennedy was shot, Oswald was being transferred from the Dallas City jail to the county facility. The press packed the basement, cameras rolled live. Suddenly, nightclub owner Jack Ruby emerged from the crowd, pulled a revolver, and fired into Oswald's stomach. He was dead within minutes. That single moment robbed America of a trial. There would be no defense, no cross-examination, no chance for Oswald to testify in his own words. Instead, his guilt was sealed by circumstance, evidence, and the official findings of the Warren Commission. They presumed Oswald guilty because the case against him, ballistics, fingerprints, eyewitness accounts, was so strong. But by dying in police custody, Oswald never faced the standard justice processes, and the world never heard his side tested in an open court. In that vacuum, justice denied, questions unanswered, is part of why this case refuses to fade. Who was Jack Ruby? Ruby wasn't just some random bystander. He was a Dallas nightclub owner, known for his temper, his loyalty to the police, and his connections to the underworld. Ruby had ties, direct and indirect, to organized crime figures like Chicago boss Sam Giancana. His clubs drew gamblers, hustlers, and mob-linked associates. His phone records showed dozens of calls to mob-linked contacts in the weeks before the assassination. Ruby was a fixture at the police station. He often brought officers sandwiches or coffee and was considered harmless, which explains how he walked into the basement that day. At his trial, Ruby claimed he shot Oswald out of grief and patriotism, saying he wanted to spare Jackie Kennedy the pain of a long trial. Ruby stood trial in March 1964 in Dallas. His defense argued it was an impulsive act of passion, not premeditation. They said he was overcome by grief when he saw Jackie Kennedy's suffering. But the prosecution hammered the obvious. Ruby brought the gun, positioned himself in the basement, and seized the chance. The jury convicted him of murder with the malice and sentenced him to death in the electric chair. Ruby's lawyers appealed, arguing the intense publicity in Dallas made a fair trial impossible. In 1966, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals agreed, overturning his conviction and ordering a new trial in Wichita Falls. For the first time, Ruby had a shot at clearing his name, or at least avoiding execution. Before the retrial could begin, Ruby's health collapsed. He was diagnosed with lung cancer in late 1966 and died on January 3rd, 1967, at Parkland Hospital, the same hospital where Kennedy and Oswald had died. In his final moments, Ruby made cryptic statements. He told reporters, "The world will never know the true facts of what happened in Dallas," hinting at powerful people behind the scenes. Yet he never named names, and his remarks were inconsistent, sometimes emotional, sometimes paranoid. Ruby's killing of Oswald remains one of the biggest reasons people believe in a cover-up. It ended the possibility of Oswald's trial and the full airing of evidence. Ruby's mob ties created suspicion he wasn't acting on impulse. His cozy access to police looked suspiciously convenient. His cryptic final words only fueled theories that he was part of something bigger. Whether he was a grieving patriot, a hot-headed nightclub owner, or a hired silencer, Ruby's bullet guaranteed that one man, the man accused of killing Kennedy, would never be questioned in a court of law. And that silence left a vacuum that conspiracy theories rushed to fill. The mob had reason to hate the Kennedys. Sam Giancana and Carlos Marcello were once allies of the CIA in secret anti-Castro plots, but Robert Kennedy turned the Justice Department against them. They saw it as betrayal. Then came Jackie Ruby, who shot Oswald. Ruby ran Dallas nightclubs, mingled with mobsters, and had debt connections. Was Oswald's silence to stop him from talking? The HSCA concluded the Mafia may have had motive and ability, but no hard evidence proved organized crime as a whole orchestrated the hit. The CIA had clashed with Kennedy since the Bay of Pigs disaster. Some officers despised him for refusing to provide air cover to Cuban exiles. When Oswald visited Mexico City weeks before the assassination, he went to both the Soviet and Cuban embassies. The CIA had surveillance, but their reports later appeared inconsistent, feeding suspicions that intelligence withheld information. Some theorists believe Oswald was manipulated or used as a patsy. The CIA denies involvement, and no hard evidence ties the agency to the crime. But declassified files show the CIA tracked Oswald more closely than first admitted. Kennedy's anti-Castro policies bred two opposite theories. Pro-Castro Cuba, Fidel Castro ordered revenge. He had warned months before that the U.S. leaders who plotted his assassination might themselves be targeted. Furious at Kennedy for not backing them during the Bay of Pigs, they may have conspired with rogue actors to eliminate him. The HSCA found no official Cuban government involvement, but left the door open for individual actors. Finally, some take it beyond geopolitics. They argue Kennedy's death was orchestrated by shadow elites, secret societies, or financial powers threatened by his policies. Some point to Executive Order 1110, which amended silver certificate issuance as evidence he crossed powerful bankers. Others tie it to Freemasonry or a broader occult power structure. Lee Harvey Oswald was not a confirmed Freemason. His affiliations were political, not fraternal, but Freemason has long been a lightning rod in conspiracy culture, and it's not surprising that it shows up here. The JFK Records Act of 1992 forced millions of documents into the public, with waves of releases in 2017, 2021, and 2023. In 2025, the FBI transferred over 2,400 new records to the National Archives. These reveal more about CIA operations, Oswald's surveillance, and Cold War dynamics. But none have provided the smoking gun. Instead, they show a web of intelligence, miscommunication, and the paranoia of the Cold War era. The evidence says Oswald fired the shots. The government says he acted alone. But the witnesses, the cover-ups, and Kennedy's own words about secrecy leave us with more shadows than clarity. Was it a mob hit? A CIA operation? Castro's revenge? Or simply a man with a rifle and a moment in history? The truth is that the JFK's assassination isn't just about who fired the bullets. It's about America's loss of trust. And that's why, 60 years later, the case still won't die. The shots that rang out in Dallas still echo through history. Whether you believe the official story of a lone gunman or suspect hidden hands within the CIA, FBI, or shadow networks, one thing is certain: the truth remains factured. This has been episode 5 of The Broken Truth. If this episode made you question the story you've been told, make sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Visit thebrokenTruthPodcast.com to join the conversation, chat with us directly, and sign up for our email list so you never miss an update. And remember, the truth is rarely whole. It's broken.